Welcome to episode 106 of Broad Street Hustle. I'm your host Tommy Nanny, bringing you a fun show tonight. We talked about it last week. We're gonna cover where do the Sixers go from now? What's their future look like? They have cap space. What do they do? Do they make a move? Who do they bring in? We're gonna throw some names around, and then we're gonna get into Phillies. We haven't really talked too much Phillies since the season has started. I think just one time, once when they stunk, and then once when they were doing better. So now they've been hot. We'll cover. We'll figure out, what moves they can make as well. So let's jump right into it. I'm joined by my co-host, Jason Sada.
Hey, Tom, what's going on?
Jason, we got Jimmy the Chalk.
What's up?
What's up, Jimmy? And we got Christopher Michael Meeker still rehabbing his hamstring.
Yep. I'm on the IL, but I'm here tonight.
Well, let's jump right into it. We all know how the Sixers season ended, as it has in the last 7 years, in an early exit from the playoffs, this time in the first round, not even the second round. But for the first time under Daryl Morey, and for a long time now, the Sixers actually have some flexibility when it comes to cap space and rosters. So they only have Embiid and Maxey, right, that are going to get paid. So they have some wiggle room. Jason, let me phrase it this way. So you can kind of give an overview of like what the situation is, but then what is it that you want to see the Sixers do in the future? And then we'll go around and then we'll talk about what do we think the Sixers are going to do, and then maybe do something outside the box if there is one. But so what do you want to see the Sixers do?
Yeah, I mean, so just to step back, like I'm not as disappointed this year as I was in prior years, because I think the whole thought process for Morey was that this is kind of a throwaway year. Like, you don't want to say that, but knowing what you have Tobias Harris, who totally destroys anything you could do with cap, with his $40 million contract. So now that he's gone, they have tons of flexibility now. So they have Embiid and they have Ricky Council right now, right? I mean, they have Maxey, but they still have to sign him. Now he's got the bird rights and he's restricted, so they're going to sign him, but he's going to get a max deal. So, really they're only going to have one more max contract basically available to them. Before we get into that, I think they're going to re-sign Oubre, hopefully at a mid-level, maybe 2 years. I'd like to see them get him back for 2 years, $25 million, something like that. $12 million a year. And you would think he would take something like that because, he took the minimum to play this year, and he wasn't bad last year. I mean, granted, he was on a bad team, but what did he score? Like almost 20. If he didn't score 20 points a game, he was right around there last year. So I would think that he would take that, and you get him back. Hopefully, like I said, he only wants like 2 years. And then the question is, like, do they go after one of these max guys? I do not want Paul George. I hope they don't go after him. I really don't want DeRozan. I think he's old. I do want a couple of guys that they would have to trade for. And I think they would be reasonable. Butler, right? I mean, Butler's a troublemaker, but you would think like you would at least get 1 year of him not starting trouble here, and he's still kind of. I guess he's not in his prime anymore, but he's not far out of his prime, right? But you have to trade. You have to make a trade to get him. I'd also like to see them kind of fill out the bench with some role players. And there's a couple of guys that I saw out there, and I'll just name them all, and then if you guys want to comment on them when you guys, go your turn, go right ahead. The first guy I think would be huge is Tyus Jones. And he's a guy that might, he's a point guard. He's a guy that might even start if they get him, but if not, he'd be really solid off the bench. Here's a name you guys will remember, and you probably get him for next to nothing. I think Saric would be a good guy off the bench. Like, nothing special, but he's a guy that could rebound. He's a guy that could, He could shoot a little bit, not much, but he could shoot. He could make plays. If you're getting him for the minimum, he's a guy that plays hard. You get him off the bench. And then another guy that I thought was interesting is Trent from the Raptors. Would be a good guy off the bench. Obviously you got the Nurse connection and all. And one last guy is Drummond, because I think they desperately need a backup center, and you probably could get him for cheap. So I would think that one of those names is coming. I mean, obviously I would love to see them get Bridges. That would take a lot. I don't know if the Nets are ready to just give up on him, but I would love to get Bridges. I would love to get Markkanen. Both of those names are going to take a lot to get.
Yeah, one of the silver linings of the losing in the first round was the Paul Reed contract, was voided because of the loss in the first round.
Goodbye.
So the one silver lining, instead of losing in the second round, you at least you get that.
And I know Morey brought him up as coming back, but he's got to say that. He's just got. He's not coming back.
All right, Chalky, same thing for you. What do you want to see the Sixers do?
Well, I mean, I think, what Morey said the other day, they need a athletic wing that can play defense and can shoot from the outside. Everybody wants one of those. They don't exactly grow on trees. I think my outlook now, I guess, would have been different than at the beginning of the year in the sense that, so Maxey, all-star, most improved player, wasn't consistent every game in the playoffs, but was a clutch player in two of the playoff games at the very least. Hit some big shots during the season. So, it comes down to whether you think he is now the second star, he is the Robin to Embiid's Batman. And if you think that, then I don't think you need to go all out to go get Paul George or somebody like that. Although I think at this point of his career, Paul George is more of a third best scorer on the team.
I mean, the only thing I'll say is you don't really have to go all out for Paul George. You just got to use your max contract.
Right. Well, that's the guy spending the money.
Said you have to trade for, so you're giving up assets to get versus just signing.
I'm not crazy about Paul George at this point in his career, but I mean, I think who was it? As Evan Turner of all people said, he and Embiid would be the softest duo in the league. But I mean, look,
and he's right.
He's right, but George has a much better playoff resume than Embiid. He's been clutch in the playoffs, and he's failed in the playoffs too. But he drug an Indiana team to 7 games against LeBron's Heat, and he drug a Clippers team that didn't have Kawhi playing to 6 games against Phoenix a couple years ago in the Western Conference Finals. So he's not that player anymore necessarily, but I would take him over Butler only because the cost on Butler is going to be too much, and I think he's shot. I mean, not shot, but you're going to pay him 50-something next year and then have to give him an extension and give up, say, 3 first-round picks to get him. I just don't see that cost. He is the perfect fit. 3 years ago, he should never left or whatever. He would have been the perfect fit. I don't think he's worth what's going to cost to get him now. And but I think, looking at the blueprint of Denver, who's down, 0-2 now, but they won last year. They had Jokic, they had Murray, and they had a lot of decent players around them, but no stars necessarily. Porter Jr. is a very good player, athletic, can shoot, play defense. Gordon, same thing. You got veteran leadership like KCP. So, and they filled out that team pretty well. I don't know that the Sixers can do that, but I think if you go out and make a trade for Bridges, which is probably going to cost you 3, maybe 4 first-round picks, or Markkanen, who they supposedly want 4 or 5 first-round picks for, or Spider Mitchell if he forces his way out of Cleveland, Ingram, the Hawks guys, none of those guys, those are younger guys, but they don't interest me as much as, a George would, or Bridges for that matter. Bridges is not a legit third star, but I think he's a good complementary piece. It's just you give up too much to be able to fill out the rest of your team at that point. And then the other name we didn't mention is probably not going to happen, but LeBron. If LeBron hits the market,
I hope not.
I think he's a better fit than most of the guys. It's going to be a 2-year thing maybe, but I think he's as immediate fit. He makes the team better than anybody else we've talked about. So I don't think it's going to happen, but he's a better fit right now than George or Jimmy Butler. He'll give you more.
That would probably be the end of me rooting for the Sixers because I can't root for him. I despise him.
It's not going to happen, but
I hope not.
Maker, how about you?
Well, the player that kind of jumped off the page to me that is available in free agency, but all signs are kind of pointing that he's going to resign in Indiana is Siakam, because Indiana's got a lot more, I guess, leverage in this situation because of his bird rights, and they can give him a larger contract than another team can. And the reports that I read said that he likes the coach. He likes he thinks the team's going in the right direction. They're young. But Siakam to me is the guy that would fit the need perfectly. He has the Nick Nurse connection. He's from the same country as Embiid, even though apparently they don't particularly like each other. But at the same time, I think they can get over that stuff. Siakam can give them a lot of what they thought Tobias Harris could give them. Grab some of the tough boards and score and play good defense. And I don't know. I feel like, hey, if the Pacers get swept in this series against the Knicks, I wonder if he changes his tune about going back to Indiana versus, looking at his options and joining a team like the Sixers. Paul George seems to be the most buzzworthy, option out there, and I think he can fit. But I personally rather have Siakam mainly because he's 4 years younger. And I think, like you said, I mean, he's like a third scorer now on a good team. I agree with that. But would he demand the ball more than what the current team is looking like, with most of the focus being on Maxey and Embiid? Would he fit in, or is this going to be another Harden type situation? I don't see him as like a James Harden type attitude problem, but would that be the same kind of thing we just felt with Harden? As for others that I could that would knock the door on to fill out the roster, I mean, we just saw what OG Anunoby gave the Knicks in the series that they played against the Knicks. He's a free agent. I would definitely knock on his door.
The Knicks aren't letting him go.
They're not. I mean, he's a free agent, but again, just like Siakam, I mean, there's a chance he's going to re-sign with the Knicks. A couple other guys out there, Malik Monk, I think, can give you some minutes off the bench. He's a good offensive player. And Bridges, you mentioned, I don't know how hard that's going to be to get him. And I agree with Jason, and a name he's been mentioning on this podcast for a while, on that's Lauri Markkanen. He's in the last year of his deal. He's on a bad team. He's going to want some big money next year, and you wonder whether Utah just wants to, grab some picks and draft collateral and maybe a player that they can swing over to Utah and get a deal done, or maybe a three-way. I'm just wondering if they're going to bring back any of these other names that are currently on the roster, like Batum or Covington or Melton or Oubre. I think I'd like to have back. I agree with Jason on that one.
I was going to say, I actually heard that Batum may not retire now. The rumor is he's going to play for France in the Olympics and then decide what he wants to do.
Yeah.
So I would definitely bring him back for a year if he.
Would you bring Buddy Hield back for a year?
No, I think he's gone.
Yeah.
No, and if you listen to Morey's comments, it sounded like he was. He said it was a mistake, kind of. He overestimated, I guess, his worth as far as the fit to the team and the open shots he would get, etc. So I sounded like that was dead.
Yeah.
Cameron Payne.
I mean, if it's for nothing, yeah, why not? I mean,
guy off the bench like your eighth.
I mean, I would probably rather have Lowry than him if Lowry's only going to play 12 minutes a game. But I'd take one of those two back for sure.
Yeah. Now, so do you? I mean, the Sixers have to empty the tank this year, right? So they have the assets of the first round picks, and
I think he's going to go for it, Morey.
Right. So it's
yes,
it doesn't matter they're not going to save any of their picks. So getting a Bridges for using all their picks is fine. Getting a Butler using all their picks is fine. Like, we all think that's it. This is their one.
Yeah. For me, my hesitation with some of those guys is not that, oh my God, that's a lot. They're not going to have these picks down the road. It's that you got to fill a lot of the slots. So if you're giving up all that collateral, all that capital to make a trade, then you got to try to find ways to work the margins in free agency. If there was a free agent that you thought was a great fit, I'd rather spend that money and then use those other assets to get the pieces around it, as opposed to bringing that one big piece in. But it's not a great free agent class as far as star power this year, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's been a great year for this to be, the year for them to spend the money. You know, a lot of these guys are aging players.
I think there's stuff you could do with sign and trade too. You could always sign and trade Harris and get something for him. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, you also don't know who's gonna want out of where they're at right now, too. So right now,
Yep.
as the season's over,
Yeah.
I mean, somebody might Durant comes out, whoever just says I want out, and that's it. I mean, we've seen that.
Booker.
That's the right. Booker alluded. So you don't know. I mean, I think right now Morey's has a plan, but that plan could change with when things kind of change in the league. So
see,
it's hard to
guys
say.
like. I'm sorry. Good.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say guys like Booker and Mitchell are guys I definitely don't want because they're too ball dominant, and I think that would hurt Maxey.
Yeah. So for Jim, Chalky said about if you think Maxey is now the Robin, the number 2. I mean, I do. I do. Meeker and Jason. Do you see it that way as well?
Yeah, no question.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, he's the number 2 guy. You're looking for a third guy now.
I actually think you're building a team. Honestly, I mean, I think this window with Embiid is closing soon, and I think you're more apt to build a team around him than you are Embiid at this point. Honestly,
Well, you're building a 25-win team then.
Yeah.
Well-
I don't. I mean, you're making the team. The team only works with Maxey and Embiid.
Yeah.
I mean, there is no
If
team
Embiid's
without.
gone, this is like that's why I don't care. Like go all out, trade these draft picks and all because once Embiid's done, then you could trade Maxey and get all these draft picks back. And
then you
rebuild.
go through you rebuild.
Right. So
unless at some point,
huh?
unless you trade him.
Who, Embiid?
Yeah.
Nah, that's not happening.
Right, but if you trade Embiid, what are you going to get? Draft picks.
That's not happening. They're not
So
trading
in
Embiid.
5 years, you'll have a team again. In 6 years, you'll have a team again. So what's the point of the trade?
It's not happening.
Yeah.
They're
You
not
need to get a
trading Embiid.
superstar back, and who's going to
And
trade
you're
a
not.
superstar for Embiid? You're not. Yeah.
No,
not-
that's not
it's
right.
not
You're
gonna
going to get draft picks.
Yeah. It would have to be
No.
some sort of 3-way deal where somebody wants out of another place and sends somebody to Sixers who sends Embiid to a third team who sends picks back to the team where somebody wants out.
What are you
Like
going to get that's going to replace Embiid? That's going to give you the talent that
I don't know.
There's
Yeah,
nobody
it's-
out there that's reasonably that you could get. You're not getting Jokic. You're not getting Anthony Edwards. You know what I mean? You're not getting
Yeah.
any of these
Right.
guys. You're not getting Tatum. So
Right.
I mean, but I really think Bridges. I love marketing, and I think he'd be great too. Bridges, like if you're talking Anunoby, like Bridges is a better version of Anunoby, I think.
He's a better
Yeah.
scorer.
He's a better scorer. Anunoby might be a better defensive player, but not by much. And in marketing would just be a perfect fit. I honestly, like if you ask me, those are the 2 guys that I would want one of those 2 guys. And then build around Tyus Jones would be great. I think he might start. Like if you could sign Tyus Jones and you could trade for Bridges or marketing, that's a hell of a starting lineup with those 4 guys. And then fill out the bench with like I said, a Saric. Like what's he gonna want? Nothing. But he could come in and rebound. Like he would be rebounding.
Yeah, you need to get some toughness back, like they tried to do
Exactly.
with PJ Tucker a year when they signed him. And
There's a
you
couple
need to
other
get
names.
toughness back.
Crowder, he's an older guy, but he's another guy that's got some character. I don't know. Drummond, they definitely need a backup. They need a legitimate backup center. Drummond's not going to cost much. The Bulls screwed them this year because they had a trade in place for Drummond, and then they changed their mind and for whatever reason, because they're just going to lose him now. But he would have helped when Embiid was hurt, and during this series. So
yeah, that I mean, he would have got a rebound. That's about the
He
one thing
would've
he
got
could do.
rebounds.
You can do still is get rebounds. So here's a name that people have won on this team for years. He's no longer a max player. What about Klay Thompson?
I think he might be done.
I mean,
He's not going to get $40 million a year, $50 a year max money. But
if he
I
plays
don't.
like he did this year, he's got not much left.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I guess you got
he
to just
looks-
hope he was like just had an off year and he's gonna come back still. He looked
I mean,
bad.
how many like major injuries did he have? Like it's hard to come back from one of them.
Well, he missed
had
those 2
of them,
years,
right?
yeah.
I think he just might be done.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not going to cost you much of anything, then sure. But he's going to get paid something.
I mean, the question is it, $20 million is a mid-level deal. It's like it's in between, entry level and star level, but is that still too much for the Sixers to give the guy that you're rolling the dice on?
Would you rather have him or Oubre? I think Oubre gives you more at this point.
Yeah,
like all around.
I mean, Thompson certainly would have more upside, but if you're looking for consistency, you got to think Oubre might be the better. I mean, at the cost, I would think Oubre probably.
He gives you more value because he could do more. Like Thompson is a shooter.
I mean, you also can't really take a chance on a guy, like have a guy sign him to that and then him be zero. You're not in that you don't have that flexibility with the
it's one of the lower ceiling, higher floor type moves where it's like this guy might not be as good as him, but he's not going to be worse on his worst day or be quite as bad as he might be. So you just take what is more of a sure thing, even if it's not going to be the best upside. But
I'll tell you what pisses me off the most watching these games is the TJ McConnell blunder of just letting him go. Like I can't believe that they would be so stupid to just let him walk away.
They didn't
bring in Raul Neto as a backup.
They really didn't value. They didn't value the backup position at all in any of the spots that we talked about endlessly with the center position, the point guard position. Like so much of that, that it's important to get a solid 8 minutes, 11 minutes, from guys. And
he would probably start. He would be starting in the playoffs.
They just thought like you can get anybody to fill in those spots and it'll work out.
That was Brett Brown, right? That was during the end of Brett Brown that they let him go and brought in Neto.
Yeah, I think that was still Colangelo, wasn't it? Was that Colangelo?
I think that was
that was Brown?
That was the burner off season. I believe he left in free agency.
So Brown was basically
because McConnell was with them through the 18 season, and I think that's when he left. Right. Or was it 18 or 19 he left?
No, he was here because wasn't 19 the Celtics series? He was here for that Celtics series.
No, 18 was the Celtics series. Okay, 19 was the Raptors.
Okay, so then that's when he left after the Celtics series because he was better. I remember he was like better than Simmons in that series.
Yeah, he basically got them the Game 4 win. Like the one win in the series they had was him putting the team on his back or whatever that year. So.
Yeah. So what do you think what do you think they actually like? What's the most likely scenario for the Sixers, Jason? Do you have one? I know you want.
I think. All right. So here's what I think they're going to do. They're going to sign Oubre. I think they're going to sign Drummond, and then I think they're going to go after Bridges or Markkanen. I really do. I think they're going to go after one of them with the trade capital that they have.
How about you, Chalky? What do you think the most likely is?
I think they're making a trade with some of those first round picks, whether that's pushing all the chips in the table to get one guy with it or to use them to fill out. Morey doesn't. Well, he doesn't always tell the truth, but he was talking about how you're not going to get immediate help in the draft. So why would you devalue something you're trying to trade unless you thought you're not going to get a star at 16 that's going to help you in the next 2 years? So they're going to move some of those. If I had to guess. There's so much talk about George. I got to think there's smoke there. I think they're going to push for George and try to do a trade with those first round picks for some other pieces. And you hope you get you hit a home run like the Celtics did with Derek White. They traded a first round pick, 2 bums and a ham sandwich, and he's a 20 point per game guy now for him. So I would say.
And I have him for Eastern Conference Finals MVP at 75-1.
I think it's going to be George and a trade of some of those first round picks for some additional help.
How about you, Meeker?
Yeah, I kind of agree with what Chalky said. I think George might be the splash they make, and they'll just fill out the roster with some of these more mid-level guys. And I think a possible big trade is coming. And if it's a guy like Markkanen, I would be happy with it. But in that vein, That's the kind of guy that you want, a wing player that can rebound, play defense. That's what they're missing. That's what they thought Tobias Harris could have given them, along with scoring 20 points, which he really never did. But so, yeah, I mean, I agree with these guys. That's what I think they're going to do. They have to go all.
And when are we going to see all this? When does this all take place, right?
Around the draft.
Summertime, yeah.
Around
Over
the
the
draft.
summer.
Draft will be late June. Free agency is still July 1st, I think, right? So, I mean,
I don't think.
George might know he's not leaving LA by that point, and if they go into free agency, then he's gonna. I think Morey will have to try to make a move with a trade. Last couple of years, there's always been like at least one deal with a decent or star player that kind of comes out of nowhere. The Gobert trade wasn't really talked about much before it happened. Murray to Atlanta, and then like the Brooklyn guys wanted out, and all that. So there's a chance that something just falls into Morey's lap, or something goes under the radar, and he calls the right team to make a deal. But he's not gonna. He's if he doesn't empty both chambers, he's not going to be around much longer as the GM. So he's going to go all out to do something.
Doesn't George have a player option for $50 million?
He may have to. I don't. Does he? I guess he might. If he had $50 million, I would have thought he would have opted into that already. But it's possible.
If he does,
LeBron has an option. I think LeBron's not definitely a free agent.
Yeah, sure. LeBron has the option. LeBron. I mean, they were saying LeBron might do opt in but get traded just so the Lakers can get something back, kind of like a favor to them to kind of replenish their system. But
I hope it's not LeBron James.
Now we'll move on to the Phillies, but let me ask you: Is it just because you don't like LeBron James?
I don't like him. I don't like him. He's not somebody I could root for. I don't like him. Because
I mean, you would have to think he helps Maxey out. I mean, he's the kind of guy that can get in the ear, and develop his game more.
He would help. But he also had a lot. He had a lot of players with the Lakers this year. He had Davis, who's not. If he's not as good as Embiid, he's not far behind him, and he had some good role players around him. And what did they do?
No, I just mean like even just as a mentor, like a teacher, and to kind of improve Maxey's game overall, not necessarily make his game better by playing with him.
I don't like the guy.
It'd be crazy for any. I mean, I know you don't like him. It'd be crazy for any of us to say it wouldn't help the team. I mean, obviously you would.
The other thing I'd say about LeBron is if he comes here, and it's not going to be a 5-year max deal in this magical world we're talking about. You could get guys that are free agents that say, "Hey, I want to play with LeBron. Let's fill out this roster," and it doesn't always work, obviously. But you get guys at a lower price that want to come play with LeBron and Embiid and Maxey. I think Maxey's a guy people want to play with now after this season. So that might have that allure. And George does has a close to $50 million option.
I think he's just going to take. I would if I'm him, I'm just keep.
It's possible. It certainly seems like the Clippers don't want to give him a max, so it's going to be. If he was going to get a max, they would have did that deal already, like they did with Kawhi. So,
right.
Doesn't say a player option on Sport Track that he has an option. Where are you reading that?
What is this? Google, whatever Google's telling me here.
Yeah,
George is eligible. If he doesn't sign a new deal by June 30, he can become unrestricted by declining his $48.8 million option for 24.
Right, and if he gets the opportunity to get a 5-year max contract,
I believe it's Forbes.
Well, they can't sign both of these guys. They can't sign Harden and George because that's not going to be possible for them to do it.
Well, he has a player option. It don't matter.
Doesn't matter. He's got an option.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm saying, like, is he going to play on 1 year? Probably.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, he'd rather get the 5 years or whatever it is.
I don't know who's giving him at this age a max contract.
If he becomes if Morey wants him, he'll give him a max contract.
That would set back the franchise just like it got set back with Harris. That would be such a mistake. Oh, that would be a mistake.
Would you not sign any of these free agents that were going to demand max contracts?
Call out the names. DeRozan, no. George, no. Siakam, I don't know if I would give him a max contract. No, I want the two guys I brought up in the trade, Bridges or Markkanen. They're the two guys I want. I don't want any of this slop. Butler, I would take Butler over George in a second. and obviously over DeRozan and all. But then, he's getting older too.
And you're getting a guy that's going to play 50 games.
Hurt a lot, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, George gets hurt a lot too. I don't want George. I want Bridges or Markkanen. They're the two guys I want. One of the two. I want both of them, but you're not getting both of them.
Yeah. I think that's ideal, but they have to be willing to trade him.
Right. Are the Nets willing to give up Bridges?
And can the Sixers give the best? Can the Sixers give the best package up for whoever those guys if they do hit the market?
I mean, Sixers have a lot of draft picks. No, they don't have any young.
They do. But Mitchell got traded for 3 firsts, pick swaps, and 3 players. Sixers don't have any players to trade except for Paul Reed. I guess if the Jazz want Paul Reed because they signed him to that sheet, they could send him in a deal for marking him. But
right.
All right. Well, let's move on here. We want to cover the Phillies. We'll revisit as the rumors start to fly and as it gets closer to when all that goes down, which you guys are saying over the summer. So let's move on to the Phillies. The Phillies are they this good right now? I mean, they're the best team in baseball, I guess, win wise. Maybe percentage wise too. I'm not sure, but are they this good, Jason?
Well, listen, I had the first pick in our draft, and who did I take? The Phillies. I really think they're this good. Let's go over the guys, right? I wrote the guys down. Who's really good? Who's having a great year? Good to great year. Obviously, Ranger Suarez, Zach Wheeler. I think Turnbull's a hell of a pitcher. Boom, right? Turner before he got hurt. Turner was having a great year.
Mm-hmm.
Harper, Hoffman. Those are the guys that really are having great years. Who's having a down year? Then you got the guys who are kind of like mediocre. They're not great, not bad. Your Nolas, your Schwarbers, guys like that. They're really not disappointing.
Schwarber's gonna get hot in a couple weeks.
Yeah, Schwarber will get hot in a couple weeks, right? Nola is what he is. You guys know my feelings on him. I mean, he's not bad, but he's not great anymore. Guys that are a problem are Castellanos. I mean, you're talking about bad contracts. They're stuck with that guy, right? They're stuck with him for 2 more years after this year, too, right?
Yeah,
is that correct?
Years is his 3rd year right now.
This is his 3rd year. They got him for 5 years.
Yeah.
Good luck with that. Stott is not having a good year. Hopefully he could turn it around. I still have confidence in him, but he's not having a good year. And then Dominguez obviously is a problem. So
Dominguez needs to go down.
Well, they can't. He don't have any more options.
I think they can.
He needs to get hurt and go on a rehab assignment.
I thought they had an option, but he has to agree to it.
He can go down with hurt feelings.
I think he can go down without having to go through waivers, but he has to say it's okay because he has the vesting he has over 5, so they can't just send him down. I don't think he goes to waivers. I think he just has to say yes, it's fine.
And if he says no, does he go to waivers then?
No. And if he says no, he could say, I'm on your team or you cut me. That's the 2
right,
options.
okay.
So, but I mean, he sucks. Like I would say, look at your numbers. You suck. You're not good anymore. You gotta go. If he has any pride, he would, but maybe not.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So I think they're the best team in baseball, and I think if they make one move, I think that they will be a very legitimate chance of winning the World Series, and that's to get a closer. And we could visit those names after, but I have a few names that they definitely should be looking at.
Yeah, Chalk, how about you? I mean, you got to admit, though, I know the schedule has been very kind to them.
Hey, you can only beat who you're playing.
Yeah.
Well, I understand that, but we're evaluating if they are this good or not this good. And, we went through it in the NFL season with the Eagles, and we went through it last year with the Phillies when they had the soft schedule towards the end of the year, and that's when they turned it around. So, Chalky, what do you think?
Well, I was going to talk to the schedule in a second. Do I think they're best team in baseball right now? Maybe not, but they're playing really well, and they're playing, as good as I thought they could, for sure. Take the, record aside, because they can't control every other team's record. But going into tonight's games, they were top 5 in all your major hitting categories, batting average, on base percentage, runs, home runs, and slugging. And they're top 10 in pitching, earned runs, batting average against, and whip. So, I mean, they really clicked. Thing not working. Hear me?
Something happened with your voice.
Yeah, you're like real low. Mika, you pick it up.
Sorry about
Wait, am I back?
He's back.
You're back. Yep.
All right, I'll go. So, anyway, but the schedule has been easier to him, and I was going to say, Turner going down really hurts, especially with Harper starting to crank it. And Schwarber's actually playing. Schwarber's got this most home runs this early in the season as he's had in a while. He's hitting 210, but that's what he is. But if you're going to lose Turner playing as well he was, now is the best time to do it because your schedule doesn't get really difficult as far as teams right now that are in the playoffs until July and August. When you got a lot of Atlanta games, you got Dodger games, you got some of the better AL teams. Next June is still a pretty soft, and even through May, a softer schedule. There's not a whole lot of tough teams, so to have to lose Turner for 6 weeks, now's the time. If it was going to happen, now's the best time as any for it to happen because you build up a cushion with your wins, and you're not playing a difficult schedule. So even if they don't play great over the next month, they can weather the storm of losing Turner.
All right, Meeker, thoughts?
You look around Major League Baseball right now, and the biggest problem that most teams have is pitching depth, because there are tons and tons of pitching injuries in and around the league right now. And the one thing that the Phillies have been fortunate enough to have is pitching depth. And now you basically have 6 starters on your staff, with Walker coming back, who I'm not really a big fan of, but in the end, you have 6 starters. They haven't lost anybody on their staff to a major injury, like Strider for the Braves. And I think that was huge. Because I think they can win the division now because of that reason. And on top of that, I mean, they're just getting contributions from pretty much everybody. Like Turner goes down; these guys have filled in for him. Have filled in really well. And do I think they're the best team in baseball? I said when they went on that road trip that if they came back 6-4, I would take it. 7-3, 8-2, and that's what they ended up doing. Then I would be more impressed, and I've been impressed because they continue to win. And I said before the season when we started, with the Phillies talk before the season, I said the one guy that I thought needed to step up, like Bohm stepped up last year, was Ranger Suarez. He's 6-0, and he's amongst the league leaders in pretty much everything. What's his odds now, Jay, with winning the Cy Young?
I think he dropped to 20-1 because the Imanaga, or however you say his name, is ridiculous right now.
If you're getting your third starter with right now, I know it's early in the season, but Cy Young talk. I mean, come on. I mean, that's you couldn't ask for anything more than that. And I think that's what's going to be the thing with the Phillies. We came into the season thinking they needed to add another starter. I mean, do we think that now? I don't. I would agree with Jason. I think they need to add another bullpen piece. I don't think they need to add to the lineup. Turner will be back in another 5 weeks. I think the lineup's great. Or at least has been, unless they get another injury like that, then maybe they'll have to make a move. But the only move I think they need to make is in the bullpen at this point. Why change anything? At this point, everything's looking good.
But don't you think it needs to be a major bullpen move? I think it needs to be a closer. Needs to be a closer. They don't have a closer right now.
They don't. I mean, they could piece together with Hoffman and Alvarado and Strahm. They could kind of figure out with who's coming up in the 8th and 9th inning and decide who they're going to pitch in the 8th and 9th inning. But I don't trust that situation. I didn't trust it last year. It didn't quite work out.
And when you get into playoffs, you're going to get the 6th inning where you need a strong lefty, and you might have to use Alvarado to get out of it. Now, then you might need Hoffman to go in the 7th, and now you're like you said, you're piecing together who knows as your closer. It's just hard to work that way consistently. During the regular season, you can, but I think in the playoffs, that's where you start to run into a little problem.
One had confidence in Kimbrel to close games last year. he basically cost us the NLCS.
Oh, absolutely.
So I mean, you don't want that problem again. And I think if there's a move to be made, that's the move. If we guys want to talk about it now, we can jump on it. So.
Yeah, I mean, last year the problem was they kept going to Kimbrel. Not that they thought they had a closer and they didn't have a closer. If they would have used this philosophy, they would have been better off than going to Kimbrel. And the Orioles are getting to see that firsthand. But as they continue to go to Kimbrel and he's doing the same thing, doesn't make sense. But yeah, Jason, you said you had a list of potentials.
So obviously my top guy is going to be Mason Miller for the A's, and he's 25 years old. He actually has a negative FIP right now, which is outrageous. And that's
102 too.
I'm sorry.
It was like 102 miles an hour too.
He does. He's got if his innings are if he's pitched 14 innings, he's got something like 30 something strikeout. It's like 32 strikeouts. He's sick right now. So problem is, he's 25. He's club controllable. He will cost you a lot of prospects. Now I wouldn't give up Painter for him, but I think if you're looking to trade for him, I think you're going to have to give up probably Kirkring. You're going to have to give up Abel. You're going to have to give up Crawford. Some kind of deal like that. I don't know if we do that or not. I'm not giving up Painter, but and because the problem is you're going to have the Orioles, who I guess it was Meeker that just mentioned the Orioles with the issue with Kimbrel. They're looking for a closer because their closer's out, Batista, for the year. The Yankees, they need bullpen help, right? So, they're gonna have to win that bidding war. And I don't know if that's something you want to do. Obviously, listen, Dombrowski's the type of guy that's going to go for it. And like Meeker said, with Strider being out, this is probably the year that they legitimately could win the NL. Because I still question the Dodgers pitching. I don't care that their lineup's great. I still, when it all comes down to it, I question their staff. So I think the Phillies, this is the year to go for it, and they might. But if you don't, there's other guys. If you don't go for Miller, I think another guy to keep an eye on is Tanner Scott for the Marlins, because they're out of it already. They'll probably,
they're already selling.
Right. He's a lefty. He was pretty much unhittable last year. Another guy is Bednar for the Pirates, who has been shaky this year. But the Pirates, they're not ready to win. And I think if you give them a boatload of prospects or, some young players, I think you could probably pry Bednar away from the Pirates. And I'm not going to steal Meeker's name. I know he's got another name. But I think there's other options. Mason Miller, I mean, man, you put him in this team, I think they easily become the favorites to win the World Series.
Yeah, and you typically see teams unload the farm for a closer like that. I mean, a position player, yes. A starting pitcher, yes, but like a relief closer.
I mean, it's a good question. I mean, if you guys could remember a situation where that happened, blurt it out. I'm trying to
remember what the Padres gave up for Hader a couple years ago.
They gave up a lot.
Yeah.
But they were, right? They weren't prospects. Weren't there players involved?
I don't remember. That's the thing. I'm trying to think about. But he was arguably best closer in the game, and he got traded in the middle of the year when Milwaukee wasn't even out of it, for that matter. So it was a weird deal to begin with.
Well, they had Devin Williams, so they felt like they could make that trade. And he was a agent. Yeah. So
I'll try to think of that while you guys talk.
Yeah, I mean,
hold on. I want to steal I want to steal Meeker's guy.
Get steal. Get press. Get
Jordan Romano.
But that's another name.
Yeah.
That is another name.
All right, go ahead.
I wouldn't have thought this would have been possible before the offseason last year, but Ryan Presley is being wasted in Houston right now. And this is a closer that was on championship Houston Astro teams that's now pitching the 7th and 8th inning. There's no reason for that. Now, Hader has not been good for Houston, so I'm wondering, whether or not that was a good move for them. And if they'll switch it, I mean, who knows what they'll do? They've been terrible, first of all, because almost their entire pitching staff has been on the IL this year, and they continue to lose. At some point in time, you figure that Houston's going to want to just unload a few guys. And I think the guy that might be on the market is Ryan Presley, and I wouldn't mind that one bit. Put him in the ninth inning, get him back to the role he's accustomed, and we don't have to worry about it for the rest of the year. So that's the door I'm knocking on if I'm the Phillies, especially as we get closer into the trade deadline. And if Houston doesn't see that this is kind of a lost season for them, I certainly think this is a guy that they can trade. And you don't have to give up as much, for a guy like Miller, for a guy like Presley, who's not even closing right now.
Who did the Cubs give up for Chapman?
My next question was, and Meeker kind of covered it. When does this go down? So, like, when is this something the Phillies are going to try to do in the next, by June? Is this something they're waiting until trade deadline? Because a lot of teams don't want to give that kind of stuff up, especially with the third wild card. There's a lot of. So what are we looking at for a timetable?
For a guy like that, for a team that has won and constantly won for the last 6 or 7 years, I don't see Houston deciding to make this move early. So I think if you're going to get a guy like that, you're going to be waiting up until the trade deadline. And if they wave the white flag, that's a guy that can go. Because a lot of teams will be after him, like Jason's saying. I think a lot of teams are going to want him. But I mean, if you can get somebody earlier, like this Miller on Oakland, if they're willing to make a trade now, all right. I don't know if I'd give up as much as Jason was saying, but I would certainly knock on the door and see what happens.
Right, so it's team dependent, right? The Marlins, the White Sox, the Oaklands.
Marlins just traded the guy who was hitting 400 for most of last year. So, who knows? They're not looking to hold on to anybody.
Yeah.
So real fast. So Aroldis Chapman got traded by the Yankees to the Cubs the year the Cubs won the World Series. The Cubs gave up Gleyber Torres, who at the time was pretty much, it might have been the top prospect in baseball.
And that was with Chapman coming off the suspension already, right? Did he have the domestic violence suspension by then?
2016, no. I don't remember. I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I don't remember, though.
It happened when he was on the Yankees, I think, but I wasn't sure.
I don't remember.
Anyway, so the Hader trade was Taylor Rogers, Dinelson Lamet, Estuary Ruiz, and Robert Gasser, who I believe just got called up or is getting called up.
So Ruiz and Gasser, I think, were two pretty good prospects.
Ruiz already got flipped to Oakland from Milwaukee for, I don't know what he got traded for.
The only major leaguer in that trade at the time, probably.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is, too, though, it's it's easier to look back on a trade like that because you know what these guys are today versus you really need to know what they were at that moment they got traded. Like, where were they in the rankings of prospects? Like an Abel and Crawfords and stuff like that.
Gleyber Torres was a legitimate top 5 prospect in baseball, if not the top prospect in baseball. But the Cubs won a World Series.
And the other thing that you were talking about, Tommy, is if you look around the league, I mean, and with 6 playoff teams in each league, there's only a handful of teams that are legitimately out of it maybe by the end of May. A lot of these teams are going to stay in the race for a while. So we may be looking towards the trade deadline before anything.
It's the teams that are out of it every year. It's the Pirates, it's the Whites, the ones that aren't going to go for it. They're just collecting their profit sharings, the Oaklands and things like that. You're like the Kansas City Royals, who weren't supposed to be very good but are playing very, they're in it. They're not going to, unless they're out of it with a couple weeks left or a week left, they're not giving up players you wouldn't think to for next year.
It's like that whole AL Central.
Yeah. Cleveland, Detroit, they're not moving guys yet. So 2016 was the year Chapman. So he got traded at the start of that offseason from the Reds to the Yankees for 4 guys who I don't think ever really played in the majors. Then he got suspended at the beginning of that year, 30 games, so he didn't debut with them until May. So the suspension had happened. I don't know if that dropped the price because you don't know, but I mean, like you said, he was traded for maybe the top prospect in the game.
Yeah, And I think Dombrowski goes for it. He's
Yeah,
known to go for
I mean,
it.
wasn't he the Cubs GM? Wasn't he the Cubs GM at that time? Was he?
No,
No,
that was
he
the
was
kid from
Epstein.
Boston, Epstein.
Oh,
Epstein.
Epstein. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, he won the next year with Boston, Dombrowski. He built
Yeah.
it. No, I'm sorry, not the next year, but 2018, he built that Boston team.
Yeah, and then lastly, before I know they put Stott at short, and he looked good. There was a game he looked really good, and I would assume they're going to continuously use him. I mean, nobody thinks Turner's shortstop career is in jeopardy, right? If Stott continues to play and looks well. I mean, it's unless Turner's goes to the coach and says, "Hey, he's better than me."
I mean, you put Turner at second then?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you'd have to.
I'd prefer it, but
I guess you
think
try.
No. I think we all prefer it. I'm saying the reality is,
Yeah.
unless Turner goes to
I mean, I don't know how much you're going to upset the apple cart at that point. I mean, could he get much worse defensively if he's at second? I don't know.
No.
I think you don't want to, like Chalky said, like it's a $300 million player. Like, do you really want to piss him off? Like, I think you kind of give him.
Yeah, I mean, you put Harper at first last year because you didn't have a first baseman because Hoskins was hurt for the year, and so you're just trying to get him in. And
Harper also came to them, and
he couldn't and he couldn't play outfield, so that was his way to play the field. But just to go back for 1 second, I don't think a starting pitcher is out of the question for them. Suarez is looking great now. Does that translate into Thompson trusting him in the playoffs this year when he hasn't let him go past 5 innings typically in the past? Maybe. But if you get some of these teams, I'm not saying go trade for Verlander for 1 year on his contract, but some of these teams that have guys that are going to be free agents, maybe you want a better, more reliable season 4th starter for the playoffs, so you're not going to a bullpen game where they seem to get killed every time they do that. I don't know. But I don't think a starting pitcher is out of the question yet.
Yeah, but the starting pitcher is going to be like a Joe Blanton or somebody like that. You're gonna like you said, a 4th guy, maybe an older player that
Yeah, I mean, I said Verlander because his name's been out there, not for the Phillies, but just that Houston may trade him because this is the last year of his contract, I think, and they're obviously in last place. But
you're not getting a horse. You're not getting a game 1 starter, game 2.
No, not at this point.
I mean, the only other question, I guess, would be whether or not you want to still replace your center fielder. And with the lineup the way they're hitting, I would say, yeah, you don't want a Rojas in your lineup if you can't help it. Are we going to empty the tank of prospects just to get another center fielder in here? I kind of doubt that's going to happen too. I
like Kiermaier for the Blue Jays, but you're not going to have to give up a lot for him. And the Blue Jays stink this year, so that's a possibility.
Kiermaier, Romano.
Yeah, that's a possibility for sure. But if it's just Kiermaier, you're not giving up a lot. If it's both of those guys, then you're going to have to give up something.
All right. Well, nice, quick, under an hour episode for a change after we had some long-winded ones. Next week, I think we decided we will. We got the PGA Championship, I believe, and we have the Preakness. So we'll probably just cover the Preakness as far as the races. So we'll do one show. We're probably looking at a Wednesday show as the PGA is on starts Thursday, so obviously we'd have to get it out early. So kind of look for a Wednesday show. Hopefully we'll bring Kevin on as our special golf analyst, as we always do, as long as his schedule allows. Meeker, I would assume we will catch you in 2 weeks or so.
Sounds good. How you guys do in the Derby? I didn't ask.
I can't. Can you hear Meeker? I can't hear him. I think he's breaking up.
Yeah. Well, listen. Hey, we did, and I think both of you guys could attest to this. We did pretty well up until the Derby. Like, we crushed some of those races before the Derby.
I mean, yeah, and even the Derby. I mean, I had my top 3 picks.
Yeah, Tommy
finished
wasn't
second. 2 of them finished second and third. It's not like, it's hard.
But we brought up a 40-1 winner in the one race.
Our second pick in that race was 47-1 and won.
Okay, right. Gun Pilot was double digits. He was my top choice. And
Seize the Gray was, of course, I used that.
Tommy called out Seize the Gray, who was 12-1, I think.
12-1, yeah.
And then Program Trading was my second choice in the turf race.
Yeah, but I mean the analysis was great. It was trying to structure the tickets to be successful is always the problem.
Yeah, I don't. None of us really
I
were
mean, and
crazy
even
about the
even the
winner.
winner of the Derby, myself and Jason both said Board as
Yeah,
definitely didn't think he was going to win, so I can't say that. But
right.
he wasn't like a complete toss out. Um, but yeah, I mean, it didn't. At the end of the day, we didn't definitively give the winner, but it was pretty good analysis. I don't know how did Jimmy D do it? Jimmy? Do you know how he made out?
I'm not sure how he did for the weekend. I know they enjoyed the trip, but he was not on Mystic Dan. So
Was not. All right, well, episode 106 of Broad Street Hustle. Like I said, we'll catch you next Wednesday for PJ and Preakness Show. Have a great night.